next I have Representative Sollman. And I think you have 2 people with you.
I do. Thank you so much. Good afternoon, Chair Beyer, Vice Chair Finley, and members of the committee. For the record, I am Janeen Sollman, the state representative for House District 30, which includes areas of Western Washington County. Thank you for the opportunity to speak in support of the DEQ policy reflected in the -1 amendment to Senate Bill 582. This proposed policy was the result of 2 years of thoughtful, hard work, and I applaud the Recycling Steering Committee for their vision on improving the recycling system. I also attended their public meetings and I shared my thoughts regularly. For the past year, I have been working with a group of advocates and national experts to develop a framework around a full producer responsibility program, Oregon House Bill 2592, for which producers pay the full cost of the system, including current collection costs. Producer responsibility is a proven approach to reducing waste and improving recycling, because as long as individual taxpayers and local governments, not producers, bear the costs of waste, the producers who design and make the products that we buy have very little incentive to change. And while Senate Bill 582-1 doesn't go as far as House Bill 2592 does on producer responsibility, it's a good start to bringing the producers into the system and beginning to hold them accountable for the waste that they create. It is my intention to bring forward 2 amendments. The first is adding in performance metrics on plastic waste reduction, and the second is including a ban on PFAS, a toxic forever chemical found in some food packaging. Globally, 33 billion pounds of plastic enter the marine environment every year, devastating the world's oceans incredibly. Plastic does not go away. Instead, it breaks into tiny pieces that can be mistaken for food by marine life, which end up in our food chain and in our stomachs. Plastics have been found in oysters and razor clams on our shores and have been found in rockfish in our marine protected areas. Plastic pollution is not exclusively a coastal problem. It is not an urban problem. It is not a rural problem. It's everyone's problem. Research in 2019 found microfibers and plastic particles in water samples from the Columbia, Willamette, Rogue, and Deschutes rivers. Without immediate changes to the way we use plastics, the total amount of plastic waste generated is expected to, wait for it, double in the next 5 years. We know that recycling alone cannot deliver all the environmental protections that we need, especially when dealing with plastic waste. Right now, only 9% of all plastics are recycled. We must prevent waste at the source. That's the reduce, reuse part of the reduce, reuse, recycle. Preventing waste from being created in the first place will get us much closer to meeting our environmental goals and protecting the environment for future generations. We should make sure that we're supporting waste reduction and promoting reuse in tandem with any recycling program in Oregon. I think this is a necessary and achievable goal, and one that we can really need to push for, and that if we're going to truly get to plastic pollution and getting it under control. Colleagues, thank you for your serious attention to this bill. Let's move the dial on plastic waste for our fish, food, and our future. Thank you.
Am I up now? All right. Chair Beyer, Vice Chair Finley, and members of the committee. For the record, my name is Celeste Meiffren-Swango. I'm the State Director of Environment Oregon. We're a statewide member-based environmental advocacy organization representing tens of thousands of Oregonians working for clean air, clean water, and open space. Thank you so much for the opportunity to testify today in support of Senate Bill 582-1. Thank you also to the Department of Environmental Quality and the Recycling Steering Committee for their years of hard work putting together this proposal, which we believe will bring some much needed improvement to our Oregon's recycling system. Our interest in this bill is rooted in our interest in seeing producers being held accountable for the waste that they're creating, especially single-use plastics. For years, Environment Oregon, Surfrider, and many other organizations and individuals have been working to reduce plastic pollution, which is an urgent and growing problem for our oceans, wildlife, and our communities. A big part of the reason that plastic pollution is on the rise is that producers are absolved of all responsibility for where their products end up, leaving you and me with limited choices when buying consumer goods, and then also footing the bill for managing the waste. That fundamentally has to change. We are disappointed that a full producer responsibility model, as Representative Sollman described, was taken off the table early on in the Recycling Steering Committee process, and that it will likely not be considered this legislative session. But while Senate Bill 582-1 is a shared responsibility model with producers paying for only part of the system costs and not a full producer responsibility model like we would want, it is definitely improvement from what we have now, which is a no producer responsibility model. So despite the fact that it's not everything we want, Environment Oregon is in support of Senate Bill 582-1, and it is a meaningful step in the right direction. We also strongly support both of the amendments mentioned by Representative Sollman, a ban on PFAS and food packaging, and requiring meaningful source reduction performance metrics in plastic waste by 2030. It's reduce first, then reuse, then recycle. We need to make sure we're supporting waste reduction in tandem with any recycling program in Oregon. If your bathtub is overflowing, you don't start by bailing out the water. You start by turning off the tap. We need to turn off the plastic tap, or the problem of plastic pollution in our environment and in our communities will only get worse. So we hope this committee will consider these important amendments to strengthen this already very great bill as this process moves forward. Thank you again for the opportunity to testify today.
Thank you, Celeste. Charlie?
Thank you, Senator Beyer. Chair Beyer, members of the committee, for the record, my name is Charlie Plybon. I'm the Oregon Policy Manager for Surfrider Foundation, an environmental nonprofit organization dedicated to the protection and enjoyment of our oceans, waves, and beaches. I had a bit to say here and to testify on, but Rep. Sollman here and Celeste did a pretty professional job, and I don't have a whole lot to add, so I'll try and be brief. I want to talk to a couple of the areas that are really important to Surfrider Foundation. We really appreciate all the work of Oregon's Recycling Steering Committee, and we believe that this work towards modernizing our recycling system is an important needed step in reducing waste, improving recycling, and ultimately creating and packaging products that are better for our health and the environment. For decades, Surfrider, alongside of a lot of other environmental organizations, have really been on what I would call the losing end of plastic pollution. While some limited progress has been made with product bans and some stewardship programs, single-use plastic continues to be at the top of our environmental cleanups and a significant entanglement and consumption problem for ocean wildlife. This issue isn't getting better, it's getting worse. In this short time, we've seen these items exponentially growing, and what's worse is Rep. Sollman mentioned in the next 5 years that this industry plans to double. By 2050, plastic production, single-use plastic production, aims to quadruple. So my question is what do our beach cleanups look like in 2050? What does the beach look like in 2050? As Celeste mentioned, we've got to turn off the tap, or at least start to slow it down and do a better job of draining the tub. So how do we get there? We bring the producers in, and I think that's really what we're talking about in this policy, and it's an important step that we're making with this bill. We're not making the full step that we would like to see, and I just want to highlight the reasons why Surfrider would like us to see going a little bit further in this bill, although we do think it's a great first step. The Recycling Steering Committee really started their conversation leaving out two fundamental factors that were important to us. One, performance metrics around reduction of plastic, and two, not including collection costs, the full collection costs. And we do realize some amendments have been made, but that's 2/3 of the expense of the system. And we really believe if you're going to make a business incentive for producers to come to the table, incentivize them and revolutionize their products and improve both our recycling system and that of the products that are being produced, we really have to consider the full costs. Surfrider Foundation's aim is to reduce plastic pollution. We're not in the recycling business, nor do we want to be, and we do understand it's an important step, but it hasn't bailed us out yet. And as production grows, our plastic pollution problems worsen. So we'd like to see greater collection costs considered. We're concerned we're not creating the full producer incentive to help modernize our recycling system and ultimately move that needle. And while this isn't a deal breaker for us, in the absence of the aforementioned performance metrics, it makes it really challenging for us to support this policy without some level of performance metrics. So we really appreciate the work that's been done to date. We'd like to see this bill move forward. We'd like to see some of those reduction metrics and performance metrics sort of worked into this. And we'd like to consider collection costs as we move down the road a bit further. And with that, I thank you for the opportunity to testify today.
Thank you very much, Charlie. Let's see, is there any questions, members of this panel? Seeing none, we'll move on then.